So for all of you out there that have been waiting for the update and changes on the new Hometown Heroes program, some of the changes are absolutely beneficial to new buyers. One of them is that you do not have to be a first-time responder or have a state license in order to be approved for a Hometown Hero down payment assistance program. However, you do have to work for a Florida state employer. So it has to have brick and mortar, has to be verified that they have a brick and mortar in place and that they're Florida based. So it could be a national company like i.e. Amazon, who have brick and mortar all over the country. But if you work for Amazon, we have to have Amazon brick and mortar here. So that's the one restriction. So, if you're self-employed, we'll be able to state that that's a Florida based company. You're just going to have proof that your employer is Florida based. So that's the one big change, because obviously before we were always having to make sure that you had a state license and that you were, eligible for that product. One of the other changes is from a minimum down payment assistance is we know they give you 5%, up to 5% of your loan amount. So if you had a loan amount of say $200,000, it fell under the $10,000 availability. So now they have put a maximum and a minimum. So the minimum, so if you buy a $150,000 home, you still get $10,000. So instead of having to go potentially with a Florida bond program as opposed to using Hometown Heroes, which has most of the time a little bit better rate than the bond programs, you're going to be able to utilize that program up to $10,000 no matter what your loan size is if it falls below the minimum. So that's the second change. Some of the restrictions to the product have stayed in place, i.e. veterans. You don't require them to be first-time homeowners. You do have to be a first-time buyer in order to qualify for Hometown Heroes, or really any bond program. What does a first-time buyer mean to any of the programs that are out there? It means that you cannot have owned a property in the last 3 years, and that constitutes you as a first-time buyer. So if you owned a house 2 years ago, you're not going to qualify. The other restriction is once you use a down payment assistance program, you're no longer eligible for a Hometown Hero program or any down payment assistance. So it's a one-time product. The one thing that a lot of people don't really understand is that this is a down payment assistance program, as all bond products are. And what does that really mean to you? It means that it's a silent second mortgage. There is a lien against your property. It's zero interest, so you don't have to make payments on it, and you don't have any interest accruing on it. What you do have to remember is that if you decide to refinance your home when rates come down, that money is due and payable at that time. If you want to sell your home, that money will come due and payable at that time. Otherwise, if you stay in that home for 30 years, it'll come due and payable at 30 years. So, once I have that discussion with a lot of borrowers and they realize that right now we're in a higher rate environment, sometimes they choose not to use the down payment assistance if they really don't need it, because of the fact that they know that they're probably going to refinance it in a couple years and they're going to have to owe it and pay it back. But I will tell you, the logic that I also like to give people is if you utilize Hometown Heroes today, which is an amazing Florida product, if you use it and you get it used towards your closing fees, obviously if you're going VA, for instance, you're going 100% financing and then your down payment assistance is covering your costs, you're going to get a lower rate with Hometown Heroes. So Hometown Heroes is a grant with Florida and they set the rates. We don't set the rate. So if we're at 6.875, for instance, today's pricing with Hometown Heroes was 6.25. We have to work with whatever they set the rates at. So, and typically it's going to be lower because they're trying to promote the product and give you the best available program for your circumstances. So you're either going to pay the closing costs with a higher rate without Hometown Heroes, or you're going to get the lower rate, not pay your closing costs, and when you do decide to refinance, that's when you're going to pay your closing costs. So hope that answers all your questions. Any questions, just tap below.